Hello. Welcome back, everyone, after the break. Thank you very much for coming back. So we are going to move on swiftly. This afternoon's session is going to be around communities and health. So that's the communities in action. And really, this is building on what we're all aware of, the government's 10-year health plan, and more recently, the government published neighbourhood framework, which have both, and many other policy documents, which have been emphasising the importance of communities and neighbourhoods in our health and how they can support and prevent health problems. And it's an area that's emphasised. We've talked about it in some of our previous sessions as well, but in policy, and that the school has also been working on quite actively. So we have a number of projects in that space, and this afternoon we'll hear of two of them, two exciting projects again, and later on we'll go on to some more digital stories. So first of all, I would like to introduce our first project on communities, and this is the Community Climate Intervention Project. And I think we have Catherine and Donna who are going to start us off, so please do come ahead. Hopefully you can, there you go.
Hi, I'm Catherine Butler. I'm Associate Professor at University of Exeter. This is Donna Franklin, Research Fellow at the University of Sheffield. We're going to do a bit of a double act, as some of the others have done today, on behalf of our wider team. We're going to talk about an ongoing project that examines how community-led adaptation supports health and well-being in the face of weather risks, with particular focus on those that are increasing with climate change. Donna is going to introduce the project and give you some insight into what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we are with our research. And then I'll use just one example from a paper we're currently working on. It's currently in revision, to give you some idea or some insights into the kinds of insights that we produced so far from the research. But before we do that, just to highlight the rest of the team, this has been a two-phase project, and we've had lots of different people involved in both phases. And this is just to sort of give a flag up everybody that's been involved and contributing to this work, many of whom are here today. So if you do have questions, you can find other team members as well, not just me and Donna. So I'll hand over to Donna for your bit.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. So, our project focuses on extreme weather events such as flood, heat waves and cold that are increasing across the UK due to climate change. Is it moving? Right, okay. We focus primarily on the UK context, where the government has recognised extreme weather events as a major health risk to health and well-being, and has made it a priority with several strategies and policies and plans that are directed towards addressing it. So just you can see on the post on the slide that we have the Adverse Weather Health Plan, which was published in April 2023, which outlines 4 primary goals. One is to prevent the increase in years of life lost due to adverse weather events. Oops. 2, to prevent mortality due to adverse weather events, and to prevent morbidity. 3, to prevent morbidity due to adverse weather events, and 4, to reduce the use of healthcare services as well. Diverse examples of community-led action seek to address and mitigate against impacts of weather extremes through the adaptation for positive public health well-being outcomes. A core focus of our research then is the recognition of weather extremes as significant health and well-being risk factors that can exacerbate existing experiences of marginalisation. So our project is created in 2 phases. The project focuses on community-led activities that take place with the aim to better understand the impact and consequences that these actions have for public health. So we have phase 1, which is understanding the current and planned actions, and then phase 2, which is working collaboratively with communities to collect the evidence for evaluations and potential intervention development. Whilst these different forms of interventions have been shown to result in significant successes in ameliorating risks from weather extremes, they're not well understood and in terms of their breadth and the approaches used and what it is about community-led actions that may be effective in supporting and facilitating better health and well-being outcomes. So our research objectives and questions, I've just highlighted in pink what the our objectives were. So building on earlier knowledge of community-led actions, we are intending to try to understand how communities may become healthier, to understand the value of community-led action in overcoming systemic inequalities, and what constitutes successful community-led action in informing future interventions from within these communities and beyond. So our phase 1 package consists of 2 work packages. One was a literature review, and the second was some in-depth interviews that were conducted. So these are our 3 case sites. The study is a case site study, and I'll just introduce the 3 sites. On the left we have the Loch Ken Trust, which is a charity based in southwest Scotland that was set up in the summer of 2020 when the local authority removed the ranger service, the water ranger service, because Loch Ken is a really 9 miles long body of water in southwest Scotland. Delivering water safety courses, they teach young people about the risks of cold water access during the hot weather through experiential learning. These courses aim to reduce water-related injuries and to promote safe access and the enjoyment of blue spaces. The second one is our Meanwood Valley Urban Farm, which is based in West Yorkshire, Leeds. This farm was founded in 1980 with the aim of reconnecting local people with their food with a focus on sustainability. Serving as a community hub, it operates a long-standing social inclusion project for adults with learning disabilities who help out on the farm. Prone to flooding via a stream that runs throughout the farm, buildings sometimes are cut off, as you can see in the picture, and buildings are sometimes damaged and access is cut off. So at the moment they are working with Leeds City Council to become a blue and green demonstrator site and also to put in adaptations to manage flooding that happens. The final case study is an organisation that is based in northern Devon called 361 Energy, which is a rural community energy organisation that supports people experiencing vulnerability to cold weather, identifying those at risk, such as older people and those living with severe and chronic health conditions. They provide energy advice, emergency heating and access to grants for efficiency upgrades. So our phase 2 project, our phase 2 work consists of 3 packages, and for the first package we have designed some participatory system mapping workshops. These have involved community stakeholders in developing a shared understanding of the system within which their interventions take place. The second work package will be about collecting the evidence. that occurs throughout the system as a result of the interventions, noting a range of indicators. Using systems mapping and the intervention from the evaluations and the intervention evaluations, in the final workshop we will seek to address the transferability of these findings and their implications. We will then use this work from the package to draw out the possibilities for extending mechanisms, forms and functions of the community interventions in each case based on our learning. So this is a seed map, so this very initial mapping of what we had learned from the work package 1, and this formed the basis of the participatory workshops that we did with the community. So we presented this to them and then asked them to write on it and to fill it in and to edit and tell us more about the system that their interventions were, how their interventions were working. And this one was about water safety training. And then the next one, I'm pressing this button and it's not working. Let's press it again. Here we go. So this was the initial output that we've got from the first workshop. So we've got 3 workshops. This is the first one. And this was the whole range of things that they told us about, which we had a visual artist beautifully visualise for us. Right, and I think I'm going to hand over to you, Catherine. Is that all right?
Okay, thanks, Donna. That was great. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into what we've been doing, why we've been doing it, and where we've been doing it. For this part, I'm just going to try to give you some insight into some of the analysis that we've been doing and developing, drawing on some of our current papers and working with the phase 1 data that we collected. So the work done to date in our phase 1 has indicated the need for an alternative approach to evaluation, or for an evaluative approach for health and wellbeing impacts that can embrace the complexity within interventions and embed flexibility, but still retain some kind of standardisation in our approach. So for this, we've been drawing on existing public health work to develop an evaluative approach that can achieve those things. In particular, we've been working with Pope et al. And their work, which offers a kind of complex systems approach to analysis of health and wellbeing interventions, as well as setting out their community empowerment framework as part of that work. And this gives a way into understanding the importance of power relations within systems and within community action in particular. While Hall et al., that we've been drawing on, offer ways to kind of derive transferability from analysis of complex systems, which tend to require the kind of case-based, in-depth approach that we've been taking in our research. So they propose bringing a focus not only on the kind of specific forms of the actions that people undertake, but also their more general functions. For example, a kind of specific form could be that a local intervention steering committee is convened within each site with representatives of pre-selected organisations, whereas the more general function that they're performing is that there is some mechanism for engaging local key agencies and consumers in decision-making about the intervention. So with this distinction, Hall et al. Argue for this idea of scaling that values diversity in form, while also allowing for the transferability of functions across different projects and across different cases. So we're using this in our research to consider the functions that our different community groups perform with positive outcomes for health and wellbeing in the face of growing weather risks, and the kinds of functions that could be transferred elsewhere in different forms. And we're using Pope et al.'s empowerment framework alongside that to consider how the abilities to actually carry out those functions are shaped by power relations. We're doing this to give insight into what is actually needed for communities to enact these different functions. So findings from our phase 1 work. highlight the multiple mechanisms or functions that communities perform leading to health and wellbeing benefits. And we present analysis of this in our first empirical paper, which is led by Leah Attwell, who's also here, so you can answer some questions if you have any later. And I'm just going to talk this through with one illustrative example, because that's all I have time for, if that. So a general function that we've identified in community groups or community groups as performing is around them having some mechanism to build and share knowledge of local needs and health impacts in the context of climate change. And this function was really evident across all of our case sites in very different forms with important implications for health and well-being. In Meanwood Valley Urban Farm, they undertook work involving local adults with learning disabilities, identifying specific health vulnerabilities and creating bespoke guidelines on weather extremes for people with learning difficulties in the absence of official guidance. In Loch Hen Trust, they work with community councils to build knowledge of local residents and identify vulnerable people for responses to weather extremes. Developing capacity within local councils to really seek out and to hold that knowledge for when extreme events happen. In our Devon case, working with 361 Energy and North Devon PCNs, they combined energy poverty data drawn from governmental data sets with NHS data to identify patients who are the most at risk of suffering from the effects of cold weather, but also those at most risk of feeling the clinical effects and having really negative health outcomes. So although these take very different forms across our case sites, ultimately the function that community projects are performing to mitigate the kind of negative health effects of extreme weather is one of developing capacity and mechanisms for identifying and understanding the needs of vulnerable people and groups. In this case, adults with learning difficulties, elderly people, and people with existing health conditions. So I'm not going to have time to do this because I've got 2 seconds left, but I'll just very quickly say we've also been looking at, as I said before, using Pope et al.'s empowerment and limiting power frameworks to understand really what it is that communities need or what they're doing to enable them to actually perform these different functions and mechanisms with benefits for health and well-being. And we've looked at the kind of importance of power within as something that's really evident within all of our community groups. But we've also looked at how our analysis shows the continued importance of limiting power, most obviously through the limitations and insecurity generated within our community cases due to funding constraints and the related processes, procedures and decision-making structures that govern community-led work. And I think we've heard about that kind of thing elsewhere in the presentations today. So this analysis is obviously presented in much more depth in our paper than I've been able to offer here, but hopefully this is just giving you a little flavour of some of the analysis that we're developing. So just to finish up, our research is showing how community-led adaptations have positive implications for health and well-being in the face of climate risks, giving hopefully some important insights into the kinds of mechanisms, the functions through which community groups are achieving those outcomes, and enabling hopefully transferable lessons to be drawn which can be used within other community contexts. And what we're really trying to do as well with this analysis is highlight the centrality and the importance of power dynamics to community action and its links to capabilities for delivering that action within the context of climate change adaptation. Okay, I'll stop there and just say thanks, huge thanks to our project collaborators.
Thank you very much to Catherine and Donna. That was really interesting, and I think there's lots of questions I'm sure that will be coming. But I'm going to hand over to Abby to talk about the Clarity Plus project. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe someone is wondering how Clarity Plus came out of a topic that says collective reimagining of community-led public health evaluation from the perspective of racially minoritized communities. Don't, because it didn't really come from there. I'll tell you where it started. But before I go on, I wanted to say that I'm representing a lot of voices, 17 community organizations, people, colleagues from 3 different academic institutions. I've circled, the consortium or the University of Sheffield, SPHR, that we all belong to. and also 5 advisory group members. So you can see logos of community organizations here, just to acknowledge all the great work everyone has been doing. And thankfully, a lot of people have talked about some of these things, so I will speed through quickly. And we know that health inequalities persist, especially for the marginalized group. When we talk about the worst outcome, it will always be those people outside that circle, if you know the wheel of power and privilege, that would have the worst outcome. And when we talk about prevention of any harm, of any health issues, it has to be rooted in trust. It requires trust for people. For example, when it comes to vaccination, if people don't trust it, they won't take it, and we know how that goes. We need local insight, and we need early action. And all these things, you would agree that community organizations are already doing, but the roles of the organizations, especially those that are dealing with those from marginalized groups, are often overlooked or undervalued. So that's where Clarity Project began. So some people may remember Clarity Project. So the acronym was actually coined from Creating Knowledge Partnerships for Equity. You can find out more on the SPHR website. But that project was in 2023, and it led to a lot of partnerships with community organizations. A lot of challenges were identified, a lot of strengths and things that we can leverage on. So many things we could do, but we could only do a few things. So we put in for the Clarity Plus, which is about how do we ensure that we are valuing the contribution of these organizations or these community groups better. How can we support them? So we know that many people are doing things in silos. So I've put a couple of pictures there to see. These are pictures of supporting community groups to deliver public health information, public health interventions, different ways. And you can see repetition in different groups. There was limited power sharing, knowledge sharing was really limited. They don't also have a way of capturing and communicating their impact, because it's just not something they do. They do these things as part of what they do all the time, but not necessarily looking to show the impact of it, but they do know that it's impactful. But we know that for these organizations to be sustainable, especially when it comes to funding, they need to be able to demonstrate impact, right? So, and also the fact that they have that limited opportunity to share knowledge. So you have groups of people doing the same thing and not tapping into what other people have done so that they can leverage on that and not have to repeat things. So that brought us to the aim of the Clarity Plus project. So we wanted to see, how does the community groups want their work to be evaluated in a way? So what are the measure of success that they feel that this is what we would be able to show, or this is what we would like to show, and how we would like to show it? And also, how should we empower knowledge sharing or peer-to-peer learning among these groups? So we had an approach, we call it partnership approach, lots of different things going on. So if you like a clinical trial, protocol, tick 1, tick 2, tick 3, this wasn't one of them. You need to be very flexible, because we would have meetings and it would be like what the community groups want to do, how they want to do it. So we had to really be flexible and get things going. But the good thing about this approach is that even as we do the project, we are impacting, if I could say that myself, but I believe even the community groups and all those involved would attest to that. They are seeing the benefit even in the process, right? So we had rapid assessment of what was being currently done. We asked our partners, how do you measure success? We had people trained to be community researchers so that we are doing all these steps together. We had academic paper searching. We tried to do a literature review, but on this sort of topic, especially because we are also focusing on the racially minoritized groups for this particular project, it was quite difficult. So we ended up with something that is more of a quick scoping of the literature. And as you may be able to guess, there was not much out there concerning how does the community want their work to be evaluated. And even though, this was a review that was opened even broadly, community-led evaluation was described in different ways, and they don't always mean the same thing. So you've had co-produced evaluation, participatory evaluation, different things, and it means different things in different settings. Sometimes they think they're saying the same thing, but maybe not particularly right. So we find, one of the main things we found is that, especially for the minoritized groups, whether it's racially minoritized, whether it's people with learning disabilities and all that, there are not always enough skills to carry out evaluation. Okay, and that is especially pronounced among the racially minoritized groups. So there are no resources, and it's often an ongoing thing. So it's not a one-off, and also it's not structured. So people would most likely, after an event, talk about things. Oh, I found out this and that. And that is their evaluation. They're happy when one person comes back to them and say, oh, what you did is really good for me. I did this, I learned this. And that's fine. There's no documentation and all that because it's just not part of the culture. Right. And the practice then varies between different types of organizations and also the sizes, because big organizations may have more resources. Small community groups, of course, not so much. But one of the things that they often like is the storytelling. So I'm grateful that there are lots of digital stories today. This is what was coming out from the community groups as well as from the literature. When people can see something, when they can hear, when they can watch, they resonate with them more, and they feel like this is how I want to show the impact of what I'm doing. This is how I want to show the impact of the intervention I've been involved in and things like that. Right. So we had, last July, we had a workshop where we brought founders and policymakers, researchers. We brought community organizations together, around 60 participants in total. That was in Sheffield. And that opportunity alone was great. That came from the community organizations we were working with. They said they want to come together in the same room. Many of them have not had that opportunity before that day to sit in a room with funders or potential funders to be able to discuss what are these things you're asking us to do. We want to just do the things that we need to do because they have very minimal resources, and to then add on evaluation to it is like adding more work with which they can't always see the value of it. And also they were asking things about, can all funders want the same thing, because they're having to fill one form for this and that, and a lot of them have just small pots of money from different funders. So you can just imagine how labor-intensive that is. Right. So we also had showcase events where people were talking about the things that they are doing. So they will organize something that they normally do, or maybe even something different, and other people can get involved in it. So various things like for men's mental health, for example, barbershop things and all that. So all very different, but very impactful. So we had all these connections also ongoing, even within the project, informally, and we still do have some formal ones. We do present at different places. I've listed some here. And then we had a survey recently. We sent out questionnaire, just a quick one, just 5 questions. People completed it, so more qualitative work, and I've listed the questions here, but the main thing is to understand what people would think success looks like when they've done a community-led intervention for public health. So we had 68 responders, and then we decided we're not going to analyze this the usual way we normally analyze things as academics. Let's ask people again, how do we evaluate? How do we kind of come up with analyzing the data and all that? So we thought we would do this way. So we had what we call collaborative data analysis. We wanted to analyze the data with the people. So we went on. We had a first introductory workshop online just to let people know what's coming, what is expected. And then last week at Warwick, we had an analysis workshop, which you'll watch a video very soon. And then in about 2 weeks' time, we're going to finish on that. So our next step will be to then complete this analysis in order to then be able to produce something that we can use and other people can use as well. And we've also been asking them, how should we disseminate this? And of course, all of them, the consensus have been that we have to create different output for different target audience, which we will be doing. So in terms of our impact, we have been able to, and we're continuing to, empower communities. And as you will see even in the video, even in the process of it, we are empowering them. They're having stronger collaboration among themselves and also connecting with funders, policymakers in the ways that they've not done before. We are hoping in the long term to be able to have these tools that will be used by community organizations and acceptable by funders as well to show the impact of their work. So hopefully this will have a wider uptake, and then eventually we should be able to improve equity. So I'm going to play a video now, and sorry, the sound of the video. Okay, it's coming up.
I'm Steffi Jegumeme. I am a researcher at the University of Sheffield and I work with a number of community organisations. I co-lead the Clarity Plus project. Today is a in-person workshop bringing together 23 community experts to look at what they consider success to be. We are all about community-led evaluation, so changing the question from what do organisations need to provide funders, commissioners and policymakers with to how do community organisations want their work evaluated and understood as successful.
I'm leaving with understanding what makes a successful community organisation.
I was not aware of a lot of information that the funders look for. So this has given me an opportunity to explore that, and understanding their perspective had made me think out of the box.
We do need these moments where we as academics and professionals get together and kind of go, right, we're moving things forward.
Today has enabled us to be in the room with those people who have that lived experience, who've gone through the challenges, so organisations like myself don't have to go through the long road to succeed. We can do it in a much shorter time.
We have been looking at the data we collected from the questionnaires and asking them to pick out the data that they consider to reflect what success looks like.
To be able to have gone through the data sets and pulled out the language that's being used, it's quite an inspiring place to be.
The fact that it's people coming in with lived examples of the way they have participated in the program is really brought out a lot of information that is going to be helping moving forward.
It's been a collaborative process. Everybody's put stickers on the most important parts of the data or what they feel resonates with their own experiences.
Today has been absolutely amazing.
Engaging.
Fun.
Empowering. Relevant.
Refreshing.
Thought-provoking.
Inspiring.
Educational.
Super duper.
Right, so that's the end of it, and I hope that video also attests to what I said in terms of the impact, and then thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Abby. So 2 great presentations thinking about communities in very different ways and different projects. Open to questions. I'm going to pick up any on Slido, but anybody in the audience want to start us off? We got one? Please go ahead. Sorry.
Thanks for really interesting presentations. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about how you defined community groups. Are these kind of formal VCS organizations, or do they also include grassroots, volunteer-only organizations, and a bit more about their funding sources, and if those types of either the structure and or the funding source influenced your findings at all?
Thank you very much. So for us, we wanted to include even those that are, so it varied. So we have some that are big organizations, even belonging to national ones. And then we had those that are just small groups, because those are the, I don't want to use the word hard to reach, but those are the ones that are not really kind of reached, if you know what I mean. So those are groups that are maybe formed by somebody, but some of them are serving hundreds of people, but they never register, for instance. So sometimes, some of them, during the course of Clarity Project, some of them have become like KICs, community interest groups, and some of them have gone further, but definitely it was broad for us.
We started off actually in the phase 1 doing a review of as many community groups as we could find across the UK that were working in some way on different aspects of adaptation across flooding, heat and cold, which is the kind of weather risks we're interested in. And we looked at 122 different organisations, which were really, really obviously vastly varied in their makeup. But what determined the kind of case studies that we decided to focus in on was we wanted case studies that could be really defined as community-led. So obviously a lot of community work sometimes can be just based within communities but not really actively led by them, or it can be work that's led by local councils, for example, and engaging communities, involving them, but again, not actively led by them. So that was our kind of main, I guess, criteria. We had other things that we were looking at as well, but that was the real focus in terms of how we were defining community groups work. In terms of the ones that we're looking at, they are sort of established community groups, but they also involve a lot of grassroots engagement with their work, a lot of volunteering, and it's kind of a mixed makeup across them in terms of who's involved. And there are differences between them as well. So the one in Devon is a bit more kind of, it's like a charity, it's employees, it's less volunteering work, whereas the other two, there's a lot more volunteer activity. In fact, I'd say they're primarily dependent on volunteer for their makeup. And the second part was, how does it influence the funding, and how does it, sorry.
Their funding source, the extent to which kind of their structure, like the extent of formalization of their structure and their funding sources influenced your findings?
Has it influenced our findings? I mean, I think yes, because the whole kind of emphasis for us was on finding things that could be genuinely community-led, and that's something that we wanted to then carry through into our analysis and into our findings. What does it mean to be community-led, and how does that then shape what you can do and the kinds of actions and that you can undertake? So I think the short answer is yes. But
should I just add in terms of the funding part of it, because a number of the organizations are not funded. So, but on the long run, they would not be sustainable. So they want to be able to be funded, but part of what we're trying to support them to do is to be able to show how. So definitely, you see differences. Those that are funded are kind of used to providing evaluate or impact information, but those that are not funded are not. So they are being supported by those who are bigger. As peer-to-peer learning is part of what we're also doing.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions online whilst any others are coming in. So, question for Abby. Did you find that any of the groups wanted flexibility and didn't want to be tied to some of the structures or systems that funders sometimes need? And I'd love to know what were the things that they thought were success as well, which I think is related to that. Some examples would be great.
I think I can say that all of them wanted flexibility, to be frank. They feel like funders have this way they want to look at things, and because what they do is so different, is so diverse, they wanted to be able to show things they want to show it. So definitely they want flexibility. They want to be able to use what they sent to the Lotto funder to somebody else, because they don't want to have to do the same thing over and over again. So they really did want flexibility, definitely. And when we had the workshop with funders, there were some of them who are already trying to come together to come up. That was in Yorkshire area, to come up with a way of almost like collaborative structure for the forms, so that community organizations can use similar forms for applications and demonstrating impact.
Sense. I'll do one more online. I don't see. I'm struggling to see hands up, but please do if there's anyone. But this one is for both groups, I think. Did any? Oh, sure. Go ahead. You.
Abby, I'd be very happy if someone said something I did was super duper. Just firstly, and it's related to what was just asked. But were there any salient differences between measuring and evaluation from the community to what the funders want? Because what we found, like in the kind of community adaptation literature, the funders are often at odds with what their milestones, their goals don't really map onto the community. So I just wondered whether you could say anything about that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, definitely. So funders want metrics. They want numbers. They want, economic cost. Have you saved cost here? How is it sustainable? Community groups want to show a story, draw a picture. And it's hard for funders to be able to point that and say, yes, this is definitely, one person's story for a funder may not really click it, but for the people that are supporting them, they actually feel like, oh, this was a person who couldn't get out of bed. Now he's happy coming to volunteer in our place. They see it, but, that's not what funders are looking for. So in the long run, is where to meet in the middle that we're trying to find.
Thank you. I'll do one online, and I think, oh gosh, we're already over the time, so should we stop? There are lots of really interesting questions, but maybe people can grab you later on and ask those. So thank you again to both teams.
So good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rona Campbell, and I have the privilege of being the Deputy Director of the school with a special responsibility for academic career development, a role in which I'm ably assisted by GJ, who likes to style himself as my backup dancer, although I'm always complaining that he doesn't wear a kilt, because that is what would be required. And also Susan, and of course Andy Sill until very recently. So it's to that part of our work that we're going to return to now, and we're going to have some more of these lovely digital stories.
Laura works in a family hub and is passionate about helping parents to promote their child's development. However, Laura notices that many families in her community aren't coming into her service. So she consults a panel of parents to find that many of them face real barriers to accessing services or just need different types of support. She feeds this back to her team, but is met with barriers and is unable to influence change. The problem lies in that this attempted co-production is happening within complex systems shaped by rules, targets, budgets, limited resources and established ways of working. These systems can feel huge and far too complicated to tackle. Yet some services make parent involvement lead to real change. So my research asks, what helps those services do it better? I explored 20 years of changing policy and practice to understand what enables involvement to be meaningful and how these enablers work. And what I found is that it takes much more than goodwill. It takes leaders who value and champion parent voice and who expect parents to be leading the way. It takes workplaces where staff feel safe to try new ideas. It takes time to reach outside the doors of the service to build trust, understand what families really need, and to work through barriers together. And it takes support for parents to participate with confidence, understanding how decisions are made and how change happens. When these conditions are met, involvement becomes more than just a meeting or another feedback form. It becomes impactful. Now Laura's team know that meaningful parent involvement should start with commitment, that creating an enabling system means ensuring that there is opportunity, capacity and motivation for real change. Now they're prepared to invest time and resource in the right places. Thinking of Laura, she was great at talking to families who have long felt unheard. She built the necessary trust to enable knowledge sharing. In my ongoing work, I'm digging deeper to understand how we do that well. Stay tuned for that.
There is no greater challenge than climate change on how we in the United Kingdom reach net zero emissions.
But what does net zero mean, and how can we achieve it? Net zero refers to the balance between the greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere and the amount we take back out. And achieving it requires us to change familiar behaviors, including how we travel, heat our homes, and what we eat and buy. But knowing what needs to change and actually changing it are two very different things. My name is Samira Hiesl. I'm a PhD student and behavior scientist studying how we can achieve this behavior change to prevent the severe consequences of climate change. My research has shown that the right policies can be powerful drivers of behavior change, but I also found that it's important to match the policy to the specific barriers of the target behavior and needs of different subpopulations, to enable behavior change through infrastructure and system changes, and to balance effectiveness of policies with acceptability. Because policies only work when people support them. And while most people agree that policies are essential, that support drops sharply when specific policies are proposed. Because people have real concerns, and I've heard them directly.
Much greater public education is needed to help people understand the basic science.
My only concern is that these policies have a negative impact on those who cannot afford them.
Grants need to cover more of the costs, and government need to take responsibility for this. The benefits for the government are huge when you take into account the associated costs from poorly heated homes.
So this is what my research is focused on now. Helping people understand the real co-benefits of net zero, like cleaner air and better health, to build support for essential net zero policies that enable necessary behavior change to achieve net zero. I also hope to communicate these findings with government departments so they can design policies that are fair and effective. Because when people and policy work together, we can tackle the biggest challenge of our time, achieving net zero, and in doing so, building a better world for everyone.
Hi there, I'm Louisa. I'm the mum of Daniel. He's 1 year old and he's very feisty.
There are more than 500,000 people in the UK becoming parents for the first time every year, just like Louisa. Early parenthood can be an exciting but rather challenging journey that can also make it difficult for new parents to be physically active, eat healthily, and achieve good quality sleep. These health behaviours are important to parents' mental, physical, and overall well-being, and they can also have lasting impact on the way children learn to look after their own health behaviours through modelling their parents. Early parenthood is therefore an important window of opportunity for improving health in young families, which can have lasting impact across the life course. The only problem is, we actually don't know a lot about parents' own health behaviours and how they experience them during early parenthood, and we don't actually know how best to support them during this time. So hi, I'm Helen, and I've had the privilege of working with parents like Louisa to listen to their experiences of their health behaviours and support needs through 9 months during early parenthood. A diverse group of mums and dads described how prioritising their own diet and physical activity were difficult when also adjusting to being a parent for the very first time. The good news, parents overall felt that this had improved by the time I met with them again, once their baby was 12 to 16 months old. This appeared to be linked with increasing involvement of their child, practising these habits together. That's not to say that some things weren't still challenging. The return to work added additional time pressures, and sleep was still an unpredictable experience. More opportunities to socialise with other parents, support with planning meals and physical activity, and ensuring that support is financially accessible were several key things that parents felt could better support them in their health behaviours. So what does this work tell us? Existing support for parents is on roughly the right track, but we need to do better to include parents to co-develop support to ensure these public health interventions are implemented in the best way to support parents and their young families. It's been an honour to have had such a vibrant group of new parents share their journeys with me. In qualitative work, you acknowledge the way you shape your research as the researcher, but I know that these parents' stories have shaped me too.
Fabulous. So if I could ask Leah, Samira and Helen if they would like to come up and sit on the stage. We've got time for a few questions. So if you can be thinking of them while they're doing that, that would be great. So any questions for our lovely digital storytellers?
Thank you to you all. This question was specifically for Leah, but I'm happy for everyone to answer if that's helpful. You talked about community services being developed and co-produced with parents, but can you say a little bit about how your research was developed with parents?
Yeah, absolutely, good question. It's been important to kind of practice what I preach while doing this. So a key thing I think that I struggled with is that what I was finding was that the key barrier in doing co-production impactfully really rests on the side of the service. And parents' experiences of that was kind of hitting that barrier and not understanding how to get past it. So I did talk to a lot of parents who'd successfully navigated that and what that looked like, and they helped me shape ideas about, okay, so what does good impact look like and all of that fun stuff. But a lot of the direct research design was done much more with professionals to kind of capture those outcomes, unfortunately. But I have been, so since the synthesis, I've been doing a lot of case study work, and that has been co-developed sort of with parents, thinking about how to do things like ethnography ethically in spaces like this where parents are asking for support, and how to, interview parents effectively about this kind of thing, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
More questions? So I'm looking on the slide out. So, yeah, sorry, the previous set of questions are on here, but you don't need questions from the last session. So, a question to Leah. Do you think your key findings are practically implementable in services in the real world, and what do you think will help to drive that?
Thank you. So the whole purpose of the review was to hope to create actionable recommendations, and it's hard to put that succinctly in a 2-minute video. So I do hope that they're implementable. So there was a lot about creating good leadership and culture where it's all very purposeful. Really, the key findings are around capacity building, which I think, the NHR have put lots of work into capacity building for public involvement, but unfortunately in services, there's still a lot of work to happen there. So a key thing there is, what does good capacity building look like? I did pick up on some things of how to overcome key barriers that services often face, which makes professionals feel like, it makes them a bit apathetic about involvement sometimes. So, for example, when parents ask for things that they just feel like they cannot do within their remit, within their resource, I found some good examples of services who spent a lot of time kind of negotiating in those circumstances and spending time to understand, okay, what does this, when they're asking this for this thing, what's the need that underlies that? So let's spend time digging into that need and how else can we meet it. So yes, I do hope that they're implementable recommendations.
Great. And a question for Samira. If you had to redo your interviews or consultations today with the new political climate, how do you think your results would change?
Well, I don't know how my results would change, but something I learned from another colleague is that reframing the problem can help people from other political ideology come on board with your research. So rather than talking about net zero, which is a term some people are not on board with, sadly, talking about immediate impacts such as cleaner air, which is has a community impact and has real life impact. So reframing the issue and meeting them where their needs are, I think that's what I would do.
Questions from the floor? Yes, Ashley.
So, question for Helen.
Thank you. So just your work with young parents and new parents, really important. One of the challenges with engaging parents is that it's often the mothers. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you managed to engage fathers in your work and what impact that had.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was something I was very conscious of when I was planning recruitment. And a lot of the existing literature has focused more on the experiences of mothers. So I worked really hard to try and recruit a diverse group. And in the end, we did have more mothers than fathers, but there was still probably about 60%, 40% mothers to fathers. And what was interesting was existing literature where there is a little bit in dads is that overall they tend to experience more positive health behaviours during early parenthood and that they find that a little bit easier. But in my study, both mothers and fathers were describing similar challenges. So it's interesting that that was a little bit different, and I think being able to incorporate both experiences was obviously quite important in kind of indicating that there are potentially similarities there as well as contrasts. But I think the way that in which I was able to recruit both mums and dads was because I'd done quite a lot of public involvement with parents before starting the qualitative project. And I'd asked both mums and dads at that point, how do you think more parents of a range of different backgrounds and genders would be involved in the work? And they said that upping the financial incentive, which is what I then did. So participants were given £40 after the first interview and £50 after the second, which is quite a lot. But I'm really grateful that SPHR were able to give me a bit of additional money to help with that. And also just meeting people in the way that was most convenient for them. So we offered either meeting via telephone or via Microsoft Teams. And I think that really helped as well. And those were both methods that parents in PPI had really advocated that I use. So I've got to thank them for that as well.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. If we can give our lovely digital storytellers another round of applause. Thanks, guys. Well done. So, we have our final plenary speaker for the day, that is Dr. Hannah Lewis, and Hannah is a postdoctoral fellow within the Three Schools prevention stream of work. And this session is a special one in that we seek expressions of interest from all of our trainees to see if they'd like to put themselves forward for this. So it's a kind of competitive process. And Hannah's was universally agreed by the judging panel to be the best proposal that we had. So I'm delighted to welcome Hannah. Her research focuses on body image, eating disorder prevention, health and health inequalities, and she has particular expertise in developing culturally adapted interventions for diverse populations, and she's going to be telling us all about that now. So Hannah, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rona. That was a lovely introduction. And thank you, everyone, for sticking around to the end of the day. It is really appreciated. And thank you also to the powers that be that selected my talk for today's afternoon keynote. It is so appreciated. And yes, I don't take it for granted. So I'll skip through the introduction because Rona's introduction was so kind. But I think I want to start just by saying it takes a village to do this type of work, and I want to just acknowledge my wonderful supervisory team and also my peer researchers and peer leaders who work on this project with me, especially Denisha and Medina. They've been really crucial in both the PhD research and the postdoc research. And I am usually presenting with one of them, so it feels extra lonely up here today. But I'm sure we'll get through it together. They're in their declin interviews at the moment, so do wish them luck. So what I thought would be a good idea for today's session is just to start with some definitions on body image and eating disorders and what that's all about before taking a little look at the prevention policy landscape and then highlighting just some key findings from the PhD before talking about what we're doing with the postdoc. So what I love about working in public health is everyone does slightly different things. So I appreciate that body image might not be your cup of tea, and that's absolutely fine. If I could start just by defining what body image is, we say it's this multidimensional set of thoughts and feelings related to the physical experience, appraisal of, and satisfaction with one's own body. Not very controversial, that's okay. We also say that this construct spans across 4 different domains, so the perceptual body image, cognitive, affective, and behavioural body image. And what I really like about when we talk about body image today is very similar to how we started talking about mental health only a few years ago, where we acknowledge it exists on this spectrum, where on one hand, people have positive body image, people might have negative body image, and in the middle, people might be a bit neutral. And I guess I just wanted to really make the case, if you've not come across body image or eating disorders before, why it's so important to keep people in this realm of having positive body image. Because if people do fall towards that end of the spectrum where they develop body dissatisfaction, so a negative body image, we can see an increase in things like risk-taking behaviours, self-harm, alcohol and substance misuse and smoking and risky sexual behaviours, as well as potentially in the workplace and in education, people not engaging as much. And then the clinical picture, we know that having body dissatisfaction is a critical component of the development of both eating disorders and body dysmorphic disorder. Again, if you're not familiar with eating disorders, that's fine. We say that they also exist on a spectrum and they're characterised by maladaptive food-related and eating behaviours, either of a restrictive, binge or purge nature. We have an estimated prevalence of around 1.25 million people with eating disorders in the UK. But I must say that has to be an underestimate. The stats that we have, the data we have isn't great in this area. But that's what we're working off at the moment. And I also wonder if you'll be surprised at all by the breakdown by diagnosis. So we have this issue in the field of eating disorders where we have what we call the eating disorder stereotype, where if you think of somebody who might have an eating disorder, I think it's really fair if you think of that like adolescent girl from a potentially white middle-class background with a restrictive type eating disorder. And that's mainly due to the media portrayals and the types of voices that we've been hearing quite consistently in eating disorder research over the years. But things are changing, and hopefully that's what I'm going to highlight today. I guess just to make the case for prevention in the field of eating disorders, unfortunately, they do have the highest mortality rate of any of the mental health disorder. So I would argue it's quite critical that we work at preventing them. I also wanted to mention body dysmorphic disorder. So this is categorised differently from eating disorders, but it's still a body image related disorder with what I would say equally profound public health consequences. So pretty poor prognosis in that there's a 45 times increase in suicidality in this population. It's also responsible for significant emotional-based school avoidance as well. So I hope I've made the case that preventing these disorders and promoting positive body image is a public health priority. I'm just going to do a little gear shift now and talk about the prevention landscape in terms of policy in England, and specifically the intervention that haunts all of these spaces. So I'm going to start by taking you back about 10 years. So 10 years ago, the year was 2016, I was doing my first policy internship at a national mental health charity which focused on prevention. And on all of the various pieces of work, I just kept seeing cognitive dissonance-based interventions as being the most effective programme for preventing eating disorders. And I kept seeing this body project intervention mentioned time and time and time and time again. And it really got me thinking, like, why why do we have such advocacy for this intervention? And I wanted to look into it, and that's when I started looking at the research as part of my master's that I was doing at the time. What was really cool is the year later, all of that lobbying paid off, and the Department of Health and Department for Education, in their quite pivotal green paper, proposed the establishment of mental health support teams, which I think we've heard about already today. But for those of you who aren't aware, mental health support teams were proposed as this new service that would bridge the gap between educational settings and child and adolescent mental health settings. And one of the 3 components of MHSTs, I'll just call them MHSTs, was that they would deliver this type of intervention, this cognitive dissonance-based intervention, challenging the internalisation of a parent's ideals. So I was thrilled. I thought, this is so interesting that, like, the government's responded to all of this lobbying. And I decided that I would hinge my entire research career on that one green paper. What is quite cool, which I'll just circle back to at the end, is in the last couple of years, this proposal has been revisited with a bit more gusto, which again is quite exciting. So what is the Body Project and why is everyone so mad for it? Well, it is the most widely used intervention proven to alleviate body dissatisfaction, this core risk factor for developing eating disorders. And honestly, when you talk about eating disorder prevention, it's synonymous with the Body Project, with cognitive dissonance. It originated over in the States by some really cool people called Dr. Eric Stice, Heather Shaw, Paul Rode, and Carolyn Beckett as well. And it's just a group-based intervention that encourages young people to challenge those appearance ideals and to really try and resist the internalisation of them. For anyone interested in the theory behind it, so the creators of the intervention also created the dual pathway model, and they posit here that body dissatisfaction caused by internalised appearance ideals is the most modifiable risk factor for eating disorders. Because again, for those of you who aren't in the eating disorder world, they're really, there's so many reasons why eating disorders come about. I've got colleagues over at King's who are looking at genetic studies, lots of ACEs and traumatic experience that result in eating disorders. And then there's this field, which is looking at the more social cultural influences. Like I said, they've been coined as the most modifiable risk factors. And I guess this is the reason why everyone is so obsessed with this intervention. It's because over the last 20 years, there's been this evolution of the evidence base where we're seeing consistently over at least nearly 200 studies now replicated globally the same effects of this decreased internalisation, decrease of risk factors, and in one of the most robust meta-analyses, we saw that the intervention can prevent around 60% of cases of eating disorders that emerge in the control condition over 3 years. Now, what's quite cool as well is these different research teams who are replicating its effectiveness have also started to address that problem I mentioned before about the eating disorder stereotype. And you can see here there's a number of adaptations for different underrepresented or marginalised groups in the field of eating disorders, such as men and boys, LGBTQI plus youth, and different cultural adaptations as well. Remember this bottom one, the Everybody Project, because, again, come back to that and I'll tell you why. Just switching focus for a moment and thinking about where we've got to in the UK with the Body Project, a lot of the research has been led by colleagues over at the University of the West of England and the Centre for Appearance Research. And again, all the quant studies are consistent with the evidence base. But what's quite interesting is when you look at the qual studies, the qualitative evaluations, which are saying that the girls who are taking part are saying, actually, there's too much of a focus on weight here. There's not enough on other aspects of appearance concerns. And, you know, things like body parts, hair and skin colour aren't being wanted to start by looking at the broader implementation in the UK, and then start by looking at the largest ethnic minority group that we have, which is the South Asian context, and identify areas of the body project that would benefit from cultural adaptation. So, I could spend a whole hour talking about these findings, but what I will say, I've got some QR codes if you wanted to scan those and look at the publications that we've done from them. But I guess just a tiny bit more context on why we felt that the focus on the South Asian population was so important. There are differences in presentations. There's a higher prevalence of bulimic symptomology, and then looking at the impact of the COVID-19 context as well, there's this widening of health equities where we saw more acute presentations, which just sort of bolstered the need for more culturally responsive prevention. And some previous studies have looked specifically at barriers to help seeking as well. I'm getting confused, so is this a time down, not time spent? Oh, I think I've got loads more time than I thought then. That's great. Great news. I was whizzing through. I can talk about the qual study then, which is great news for everybody. So yeah, this was really the biggest study that came out of the PhD, where we just wanted to take a moment to explore with South Asian women and girls, what are your experiences of body image, body dissatisfaction and disordered eating? So this is where you're more than welcome to scan the QR code. Hopefully it works, otherwise that's quite embarrassing. You'll see as well the title that was chosen for this study was The Pressure to be Fair and Lovely. And for anyone who's not aware, Fair and Lovely is a skin lightening cream. And I guess the key finding that came out of this study was that exactly like those girls in that qualitative evaluation said about the body project, there's this pressure on skin tone and skin shade, and there's this experience of colorism that really influences South Asian adolescent girls' body image and therefore eating disorder experiences. Like I said, I would love to spend all the time going through each and every theme and each and every wonderful quote, but I've just chosen a handful for you. So you can see, I'll just go back to that, so you can just see some of those voices and hear some of their experiences and perspectives. I'll take a sip of water while you read. Now, it's a bit scandalous to take these really rich quotes and these, you know, really insightful perspectives and turn them into a conceptual framework. But what we have done is we collaborated with a local charity called First Steps ED, where a lot of the girls who were either participants of the research we did or part of the co-production panel and experts by experience involved in the wider project, they were involved in this campaign video. So again, do feel free to scan that and hear directly from them about their experiences. I think the one, if I had to choose one thing that I think this audience would be interested in me explaining in a little bit more detail, it's this idea that a lot of the girls were telling us that their parents, their aunties, they had experienced a lot of real targeted public health campaigns around distinct risk factors for South Asian populations regarding things like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and also really making it aware that for South Asian populations, there's different BMI thresholds. Unfortunately, the girls have really internalised that, and they've been really aware of these things to the extent that it's become harmful, to the extent that it's now a risk factor for their own body dissatisfaction and disordered eating. And there's a lesson in that. Not sure quite what it is yet, but I'd love to talk to people to figure that out in a bit more detail. If I was really cheeky and chose a second thing I think you'd be interested in, I'd probably say what was so interesting is the majority of the young people we spoke to highlighted how a real shift for them in the development of their body image was around puberty, and how they felt they started puberty much earlier than their peers, and their journey with menstruation and hormonal health wasn't the same as their peers. And when you look into it, there is a disparity between polycystic ovary syndrome, as it used to be called, the name's just been changed, between this population and others. So again, another thing, I don't know the answer to it, but I think it's important that we try and figure it out. Now, just bringing you back to the present day real quick, and how we've continued and built on this work with the postdocs that we've been doing over the past 18 months. So what we did just at the end of the PhD, the final little study that we did based on the big qualitative one, was we did something called nominal group technique. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but I'm obsessed with this methodology because it really does level the playing field when you're working with people with lived experience and clinical and academic expertise as well. So look into it if you don't know it, it's brilliant. And essentially what we did with that process was we identified 5 key recommendations to adapt the body project intervention to make it more appropriate and meet the needs of the South Asian adolescent girls that we were working with. Then we did some further co-production to sort of implement those recommendations into this shiny new adapted intervention. And there were 3 things that came through so strongly. That was the focus on bicultural identity. So as I mentioned way at the beginning around the theoretical underpinnings, it's all about the appearance ideal and the internalisation of that. Well, for the girls that we've been working with, they're saying they've not just got one appearance ideal to contend with, but 2. And a lot of them often feel like, oh, I'm being dragged in different directions, and that clash is actually a experience within itself. The bottom one here as well, the focus on respect. So with cognitive dissonance, the young people are often encouraged to practice speaking out and actively resist the appearance ideal when they see it, out in the community, and when they hear it from their family members, from their community elders. But we were told, absolutely not. You can't turn around to your mum and say, when they comment on your body, say, actually, have you heard of something called the appearance ideal? That's absolutely fundamentally not appropriate in these settings. So we've really rejigged some of those role play exercises to make it more culturally appropriate. But the biggest one really is around the peer delivery model and ensuring that those with lived experience and who are from a South Asian background are there delivering this work, delivering the intervention, and that's why I'm so grateful for the team we've got. Additionally, we've made, co-produced this wonderful toolkit to support school staff to take part in our pilot. Anyone who does school-based research knows how difficult it is, and anything we can do to make it easier for people we want to collaborate with, we should do. And this pilot is now underway, so I'm really excited by the end of the year to be able to report on some of the evaluation of that. And then to disseminate those findings, really keen to share that we've been funded by the School of Primary Care Research to extend our dissemination phase. So we'll be collaborating with NHS England on this national community of practice, where we'll be able to highlight not just the findings from our own evaluation, but other research teams or mental health support teams who have been working on supporting implementation with these underrepresented groups in mind. So we'll be highlighting from last summer when we did a piece of work specifically with neurodivergent students to understand how to adapt delivery to make it more appropriate for them. And then if anyone has any other ideas, you're more than welcome to get in touch. I've got a sense that something around getting better longitudinal evidence in the UK and some cost-effectiveness analysis on these interventions would be a good idea, she says, as a qualitative researcher. But yeah, if anyone has any ideas, I'd be really grateful to hear them. Conscious of time, but I said I'd circle back to the Everybody project. I just want to highlight that this is the latest version of the Body Project intervention, where they sort of try and incorporate all these different intersecting identities and different specific risk factors for underrepresented groups in this like single, more flexible framework. So again, I'm thinking that could be a way forward to support implementation of this policy in the UK. Thank you so much for hanging in there. That's my email if anyone wants to get in touch and talk about some of these ideas. Yeah, I'd be really grateful for that. Thank you so much.
That was just great. So we've got time for just one or two questions. Yes, Peter, I can see. Can somebody get a mic up there? Thank you. And then, yeah.
Thanks, Helen. That was brilliant. And I'm Peter. I do public involvement with the school. I was particularly taken by some of the case studies or the examples given. There was one in particular where if you come to a South Asian household, you'll be expected to eat everything and you will leave very full and take a doggy bag home. Is that endemic in the culture across, or is it a particular... I mean, I do a lot of work in alcohol. I know it differs with, like Punjabi men, for instance, are very much in, yeah?
Yes, so just sort of thinking about what I've been told before by the girls I've been working with and relaying that information, yeah, I'm hearing that's quite a common occurrence, especially when there's, you know, a lot of family celebrations or food-based religious celebrations. We've been told before that in South Asian culture, food is a way to communicate your love and hospitality, hence refusing that can be quite offensive. And so the girls have told me that, yeah, that's kind of common practice for them.
That really jumped out. Thank you.
Cheers.
Great. There's someone in the back row who wants to ask a question.
Hi, that was really interesting to listen to. I'm a public partner. I was particularly interested in how did you get that cultural understanding and that cultural competency in working with South Asian women? Did you have any kind of further involvement or support from South Asian women and girls?
Yeah, absolutely, and couldn't have done this project without them. So, like I said, we've got the two peer researchers who, you know, this project is basically theirs. And we've been working with a lot of community groups as well and having a lot of advisory sessions so that we could understand how to conduct this research in the most culturally competent way. So, for example, one of the things we did is we had the interviews conducted by the peer researchers as well, and they would like co-facilitate the focus group that we did and the co-production sessions that we've done more recently. We've also thought about, and oh God, I wish I could talk more, but like one of the chapters of my PhD was thinking really explicitly on how we do lived experience research in eating disorders well, and how we do it in a way that does move us away from the eating disorder stereotype, so make it more inclusive. And so we offer, like with some of our other more senior peer researchers, like reflective spaces that are just for people who are working on the project, who are from a South Asian background, so they can sort of share their experiences and reflect on how this project is affecting them and how they can develop as well.
Great. One final question here from Rowan.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks so much. As a qualitative researcher, I'd be really interested to hear you talk a little bit more about what work did you do to kind of challenge any kind of inherent biases or limits to your knowledge and work reflexively while being the PI on a study like this and being, having the experience and background that you do.
Thank you so much for asking that question. We go into a bit of detail on this in that qualitative paper, but I guess just in the time we've had, we name it and we talk about it, and we've created a really positive working environment where we can sort of challenge each other, and well, they challenged me and I really welcome that. I also have my supervision with academics who's from a South Asian background, but we've talked about it a lot, and we've really recognised that despite my own lived experiences of X, Y, and Z, that'll only get me so far in doing this work. And yeah, like I said, just naming it and talking really openly to each other about it and what can be done to try and make people feel as comfortable as possible. But yeah, it's in the paper as well.
Great. Okay, well, I'm really sorry to have to bring this session to a close, Hannah, but thank you so much for your wonderful plenary session. Can we give Hannah another big round of applause? So I'm going to now hand over to Ashley, who is going to close the day for us.
Okay, thank you. And I know that it's really very warm in here. Anybody who was in the meeting yesterday knows that we were frozen. So, yeah, we're extreme heat and extreme cold. I know it's that when we're about to finish, but I'm going to ask you just to indulge me just for a moment. And I'm going to keep you for another couple of minutes. So I want to just mark something today. I want to just say that we are delighted that we have Brian Ferguson with us today. Brian doesn't know I'm doing this. So this is Brian is a long-serving member of our SPHR Advisory Board, and he's joining us here in ASM. Some of us know Brian well, but others less so I'm going to take a minute. Professor Ferguson has worked across academia, the NHS and civil service for a 40-year-long career in the health field. He was director of the NIHR School for Public Health Research Programme, chair of its prioritisation committee, and previously served on the advisory board, so right from 2014 to 2025. He joined PHE, Public Health England, for those with a long memory, in 2013 as Director of Knowledge Intelligence, and was PHE's Chief Economist from 2015 to early 2021. Prior to that, he was a director of the Yorkshire and Humber Public Health Observatory, for those with even longer memories. And he's also chaired a research advisory committee for the National Diabetic Eye Screening Programme. He serves as the chair of the OECD Expert Group on Economics and Public Health, and is a member of NICE's Public Health Intervention Advisory Committee.
Ollie, can you mute the computer?
Ollie has an opinion. Brian has previously held posts as Deputy Director for the Centre for Health Economics, University of York. He was founding professor for economics, University of Leeds, and a professor of, he was one of the first members of the Faculty of Public Health through the UK Public Health Register. I know many have followed in his footsteps. He's been a member of the National Public Health, he was a member of the National Public Health Career Scientist Award panel, running until 2010. And I myself was a beneficiary of that, and I know that my friend and colleague Judith Rankin was, and many others. And this had predated NIHR and wasn't taken forward, but it actually boosted many of current public health leaders. It was Brian's inspiration for this that he created the NIHR Population Health Career Scientist Awards, which he established in 2021, and is now in its 6th round. And again, we have people in the school who've benefited from that. And this is to enable senior researchers to take that next step.
and help us get that next generation of leaders in the field. Brian, during his tenure, also established the Health Determinants Research Collaborations, with 10, then growing to 30 at local authorities, and developing a research culture and evidence-informed practice in the delivery of public health. A fantastic legacy. He also instigated the Public Health Hub, one-stop shop for everything on public health in the NIHR and beyond. Last year, Brian was appointed as NIHR Strategic Advisor in Public Health, a role he held until March. Running throughout his career to date, Brian's commitment to legitimising evidence-informed advocacy as a core part of public health academia and practice. In all the roles I've mentioned, and really this is not exhaustive, it's a selection. He's been a long-standing and fearless advocate for increased prevention, investment in all types of levels of prevention. My goodness, we need that. For prevention to be seen as an investment in health on a level in the same as investment in NHS, and for it to be properly accounted for in that way. And we need that. Rigorous but innovative approaches to evaluating the cost and benefits of investment in prevention, genuine prevention. And we have sickness prevention right there as a priority. Innovative approaches to knowledge mobilisation to ensure research and intelligence reach all parts of the public health system, particularly local authorities. And we've seen some of that innovation today, so long may that continue. And also for increased capacity in doing and using public health research. Brian was recognised in the King's Honours List in December 25 with an MBE for his services to public health research and for his work with NIHR. Despite his eminence, Brian is really modest and generous with his time. Many of us have benefited from Brian's advice, mentorship and friendship. I know many of his friends are going to look forward, and today I've seen them engaging with Brian. If you don't know Brian, tomorrow, please take an opportunity to say hello and to talk to him. I'm just going to invite Brian to the stage, please. And I'm sorry, Brian, I know this is not a comfort zone for you at all, but something that very few people know about Brian. Please come on up. And I'm not going to ask you to do it. Okay, I'm really not. In addition, Brian is a talented classical guitarist.
I've got it with me.
I wish I'd asked him to bring it. And in support of this, Brian would like to offer you a token of our appreciation and gratitude. So this is, first of all, I did do that. This is first a much coveted NIHR School for Public Health Research paperweight. And so Brian is a real fan of a guitarist, a very young and talented guitarist called Alexander Whittingham.
Oh.
And we've been in cahoots, you might have realised.
You have.
But we have bought Brian a couple of tickets to a concert very soon, and also a lesson with said lady. And that's for you.
Wow.
Brian, on behalf of SPHR and Public Health Research, thank you.
How could you do that? Thank you so much. The older you get, the more emotional you get at anything. that was really lovely. You'll be very grateful to know I'm not going to do a great speech now. And I did genuinely not know that was happening, so it was so lovely. One of my colleague programme directors, Elaine Hay, that many of you might know, Elaine was the programme director for Applied Research Programmes, was that right? Elaine, when she left NIHR, and there was the usual bit at strategy board when people said nice things to her, and And she gave the best quote I think I've heard from anybody who's done that sort of thing, where she said, when you're in this situation, it sounds like a mix between an obituary and an Oscar acceptance speech. And I feel a bit like that. Am I still alive?
Yeah, you know, we said career
Just
to date.
Career
to date.
I won't try to say any more thank yous, because I'll get more emotional. But the Alexander Whittingham thing is lovely. As Jenny knows, I've had 2 lessons with her already, so a third one will be wonderful.
And she's looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
very welcome.
everybody.
Brian,